Ask the Podcast Coach for July 11th, 2015.
Let's get ready to podcast.
Oh, this one goes to 11. Welcome to Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. You can join us every Saturday, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. I heard that a lot this week. What time zone are you in? Eastern Standard Time, which means for most of you, it's really early. Even if you're on the East Coast, it's kind of early. For Jim, it's like, I don't know, it's 4 a.m, something like that.
Just waking up.
And, he's not just for breakfast anymore. Recommended by, I've already said the dentist one. Let's see, what else can we say? Fortified with
all your essential vitamins and minerals.
Yeah, there you go. The one, the only. Jim Collison from theaverageguy.tv. How's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Good to be back, and good to be on Ask the Podcast Coach again.
Yes, and
which Rob Greenlee turned into Ask a Podcast Coach.
There you go.
Spreaker Live. So
pick one.
You've been listening to Spreaker Live, which actually I recommend. Rob's doing a great job out there. Yeah. I binge listened to that this week. We were driving back from 4th of July stuff, and he's 5 or 6 episodes in. You were on 5, I think.
Yeah, I was going to be on, and then that was the week my tooth went south.
So 5. I think he's on 6.
Yeah,
he's been changing formats and stuff. It's an interesting. If you listen 1 through 6, they each have a little bit of a different format. It's kind of an experiment. I think he's trying to figure out where his voice is. This goes back to what we talk about all the time. It really takes about 10 for you to find your voice, right?
Yeah.
Find what you want to do. His
interview with Jared Easley. Jared Easley always brings his A game anyway, but I was clamoring the crap out of that episode. By the way, Clamor is now fixed. Thank you, Apple, for when they came out with the new iOS with the Apple Radio, whatever it is, Apple Music, that broke Clamor. That has now been fixed. And now if you go to clamor.com and sign in, you can actually make clamors from there. And my Slack is making noise. How do I turn that off?
Yeah, I just sent you a note on Slack. We've been toying with the idea of using Slack as the back end show notes for Ask the Podcast Coach.
Yeah.
So Dave and I have a private channel that we've created between the two of us, and except Dave's notifications are still turned on.
Yes. So I'm typing you a chat in the Google chat to go, let's use it. Oh. Michael, more noise. Great. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
I'll be all right. I think we're going to use, see if I, where are the notifications?
You can close. Yeah, you can. If you go up into, I think it's in preferences. So go up to the group, and let's see. Maybe not.
Maybe not. I'm like, all right. It's one of those things.
Yeah, there's a noise. I remember notifications being somewhere. It's still fairly, it's still fairly new to me, as far as all the features that are available in it. It's super powerful. We've begun using Slack. I have 2 groups at work. A podcasters group out there somewhere. I started one for my network. It's crazy. I'm using it everywhere. So it's one of those kind of things. Once you get in, you're kind of like, I want all my communication here, right? It's so easy to have it all in one place, and it works great on your phone. And so if I could only find a way, I was really hoping there would be some kind of way to create a public chat room with this, where I could use Slack and like create a public space, but they don't, not yet.
Yeah. And we probably should say, hey, if you want to get on the phone with us, that number is 347-850-8007, 347-850-8007. And I have muted my noises. If you go under the group and go under preferences, there's a spot there.
Oh, it is there.
And it was too obvious. It said mute all sounds, and I was looking for something, I guess, a little more.
Oh, I see it on the bottom there. Sounds, mute all sounds.
But
choose your own sound if you'd like.
Yeah, and we have a special guest in the studio today, Nat. There he goes, and he's gone. Yeah, because I'm like going, buddy.
Mr. Miyagi.
That's right. When you can snatch the pebble from my hand. But Jared Easley this is like a meme that I'm starting to see, and I think it's something where I know Daniel has an episode coming up with Chris Brogan about this in the future over at the audacitypodcast.com. But Jared said he thought growing your audience was done by getting a super big guest, like going out and getting that A-list guest. And then I listened to Harry over at Podcast Junkies, and he interviewed Jessica Rhodes, who is like, her gig is a podcast booker. Like, she will go out and help you find guests. And she said when people sign up, she has a thing on her form that says, let's just talk about A-list guests. And they both said the same thing. It's not about getting a big guest. It's about getting a guest that's right for your audience. And I was like, the whole time I'm in my car, like, amen. It's like, yes, finally. And I think we all kind of heard that. And we saw John Lee Dumas did that. He had these big guests, but again, he had big guests that fit his audience, and they had big stories and things like that. And so it's kind of fun to watch like a community learn a lesson together, to go, oh, we thought that was going to work. And
well, this happened to us at Gallup. I have all these strengths coaches, and when I have our biggest audience are our biggest strengths coaches. And so when we had Robert Scoble on, and I thought he would be gigantic, and it was good, don't get me wrong, but it didn't, you'd think, oh, Scoble's got a gigantic audience. Well, it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, not always. Yeah. I look up and we got 2 callers.
Nice.
Ending in 5502, you're on with Dave and Jim. What's your name? What's your question? Honest you are. Ending in 5502. I know the phone was working because we heard it. All right, we will come back.
They muted themselves.
We will come back, or they're listening to the video, so they're on mute. Yeah. Ending in 6251, you're on with Dave and Jim. What's your name and what's your question? Maybe it's not the phone. Oh, God bless America. Let's see here. If I do this.
Ask the Podcast Coach is brought to you by
definitely not that. They're not muted. They're live.
I know. We heard it. We heard the audio coming.
Yeah, I just played a button, so it's not I can get audio out of my.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm on here. But
there we are.
There we go.
Yeah, don't listen through the video. In the immortal words of the No Agenda Show, turn down your speakers. So you have to listen through either the phone or whatever you're calling it.
That would be me.
Yes. So you're with us. Who is this? Yeah, see, they're listening through the video. You're on with the.
Yeah, how does that work? I don't even, because I would think if I were going to call into Blog Talk Radio, I'd shut off the video and.
Yeah. So ending in 6251, if you talk, you're on the air. The problem is what? There's a 30-second delay?
At least 30 seconds between the video and the audio. That's one of the drawbacks. You got to listen to the audio coming from the call.
Yeah.
To make it work right. Yeah.
Whatever you're calling in on.
Yeah, shut everything else off.
There's another Nat. Do I have some sort of dead banana behind a bookcase that I'm not aware of?
And why do gnats live in banana peels? How does that work? I know. Makes me wonder.
This is Jeff. Can you hear me there?
I can hear you, Jeff. You're on with Dave and Jim. How do we?
I think you're going to have to drop them and have them call back.
Okay, that's me.
That's you, yes. Feel free to talk. So turn off your speaker.
I can hear you on the audio, but then whenever I try to listen to you on the phone, I'm not getting anything from you.
You're not hearing us on the phone. Well, that's interesting. Because you're getting... I'm not muted.
Okay. I can't hear anything over the phone itself.
Okay.
Interesting. So there's the feedback looped back to the phone. Just it must not be working.
Which is
okay.
Weird,
this has a delay on it of about 2 minutes. I'm going to have to try back.
Yep. Do that.
Yeah. Very weird. Well, that was fun because I mean the phone line is using the exact same thing that Mixler is using, that Spreaker's using.
Yeah.
And all the lights are blinking. So
maybe.
That's always fun.
Oh, it is. It is.
The phone line.
So it's good.
Okay, so that was John Buchanan was on the phone.
I was listening back to the show we did with remember when we couldn't get Blog Talk Radio working.
Right.
And so we took in calls. And as a podcaster, yeah, that is the easiest way to go. We always say live. Oh, the joys of doing live. Well, it's there's always there's a lot of hooks and a lot of things that have to get put in place to make it work right. The advantage is you guys get to hear all this, right? I mean,
is that really an advantage? I don't know.
Most cases you would not hear it because the podcaster would cut it all out.
So we'll try this again.
All right.
Ending in 6251. You're on with Dave and Jim. What's your name and what's your question? Yeah, see, I guess they can't hear us on the phone.
Hello, this is Jeff Holbrook.
Hey, Jeff.
No, I cannot hear anything you're saying on the phone.
Hello.
Well, go ahead and say your question.
There's about a 2-minute delay or something like that on what I'm saying, on what's coming out to you, and I hear absolutely nothing on the phone itself.
Well, go ahead and ask your question, Jeff. And I will.
It's down to about 30 minutes. Okay. I have a WordPress site for the first time.
Okay.
A big delay. I'll go ahead and ask it straight out. I have a WordPress site for the first time, and the problem I've run into is that when I first signed up with HostGator, I set up the URL as daggersofthemind.net in order to have the .net where I already have the .com through GoDaddy. Then we started another podcast in the meantime. And so whenever I brought the site up, we changed the URL to holbrooknewmedia.com. Everything is working fine. Everything's happy, except whenever I have the, when I look at the stats, it still shows as the homepage just in the stats. daggersofthemind.net, and when I send out an email that is automatically where they subscribe to the posts, at the bottom is a little short URL that then goes back to that. And so I'm getting all kinds of hits on daggersofthemind.net while everything is working just fine as the website being holbrooknewmedia.com.
Okay, so there we can hear how long the audio is. Okay, so I think we got enough. Thank you, Jeff, and I will mute him. Yeah, part of the problem, it's not really a huge problem, is when you sign up with HostGator, you tell them, it's almost like your basement. Like, here's what I'm basing my website on. And when you said .net, you can, redirect your GoDaddy domain to the .net. But the bad news is when it gets there, it's going to show .net. Jim, do you know of any magic voodoo to how to, you could add the domain you could add .com as a add-on domain and then point GoDaddy at that, move your .net WordPress to the .com WordPress, and then redirect the .net to the .com.
Yeah, it's a complicated one. I probably have to go back and this is where it'd be nice to ask some questions back on.
Yeah,
but it's no, I don't know if I've got any advice for him there. There's get a pro at this point.
I'm gonna say I would ask HostGator on that. I'm sure. And what I'm trying to find behind the scenes here,
there may be something with the backend DNS as well, right? When you're thinking about the way the internet routes traffic. And so, when you sign up for a URL, right? When you buy a domain, you get, your domain provider. That's where you get that mywebsite.com account, and then your host provider is going to provide you an IP address, right? And the whole job of the DNS provider is to translate your host name, mywebsite.com, into the IP address of the server where it's at. And so those two have to be connected. And so in your DNS settings, so if you go to your host provider, GoDaddy, I don't like using them, but I'm a Hover guy, so I like Hover. They're a little bit more expensive, but they have a great back end as far as managing your DNS names. You would go into that and you would actually make an A record to send that over to so you're going to say, okay, when people come here, it's going to look at this IP address, and that IP address you're going to get from your host provider. And so you just need to make sure those two things are in sync, right? That's if you want to make sure that's working, that's going to get when people type in your website.com, that's going to make sure it's going to the right server. When you're changing names, if you're going to change, what you're doing is you're taking one DNS and removing it from the server. And this may be what it sounds like might have happened, is that the old URL, the old domain name, has not necessarily been disconnected from the IP address. I don't know. That's what it sounds like to me. I could be totally wrong here. So I would check the DNS records for both those sites, make sure they've got the right numbers and they're doing what you're doing. And then from a stats perspective, just make sure the stats have you got the right URLs in them once you've got that situated. So that would be, for me, I would first make sure I'd go to my host provider, or I'd go to my DNS provider and make sure that my URLs are pointed to the right server, and then go back and make sure the stats are pointed to the right URLs.
Yeah, what I'm doing behind the scenes.
Give you a few minutes to troubleshoot while I talk about all that technical mumbo jumbo.
Is I want to make sure I'm going into because in theory, Blog Talk Radio is listening to whatever I have set up as the default. And if I go into sound of my Mac.
Dave, if we were smart, I would do a test call with you every week.
Yeah.
Just to make sure it's working right. Let's add that to the pre-show stuff. Is that I'll call in first and make sure that that seems to be the hardest part of.
According to this, we are rocking and rolling on the input. So I'm not.
That
sure.
Could have been. Is there anybody hanging in the?
No, I was wishing they were, but
so maybe John can call back in. John,
because actually I disconnected and reconnected, and
let's give it a try again. Maybe John can call back in and sound like he might have a question.
But it's one of those things. I would probably get involved with HostGator. Doesn't sound like it's 347-850-8007. But here we're all early, and we keep expecting nothing to change because I'm really not changing any knobs on anything. I've been very good about that. And here we go, ending in 55. There we go. Ending in 5502. Hopefully you can hear us. You're on with Dave and Jim.
Hey, Dave. Yeah, I can hear you. It's John. It's John Buchanan.
Beautiful. So I don't know what was going on there, but we're fixed.
Maybe just the caller.
Yeah. So if Jeff wants to call back in, we could always go that route too. How's it going, Mr. John?
Not too bad. The question I have now as a frugal podcaster of a hobbyist. And I'm trying to think of ways to cut back. Are we at the point now? Listen, I'm frugal. I'm not an Android user because we all know they're leeches.
You do know
that has to be a T-shirt. That has to be a T-shirt.
I heard that. I forgot to clamor it. I was going to there we go. Yeah.
I was going to clamor it, but I figured I would insult Jim, and I didn't want to insult Jim.
That was my saying. I said it, right?
He owns it.
I mean, it's not licking a donut or anything, but it's it might be offensive to some people.
Licking a donut.
So anyhow,
okay.
Oh, that's an Ariana Grande reference.
Okay,
never mind.
All right.
But getting back to the question, do we really need a website now to podcast? Because when I first started, they said, "Oh, you have to have a website." I'm thinking to myself, a website, because to be honest with you, I'm allergic to code. Whenever anybody starts talking about code, my throat swells up. I start getting hives. I can't hear. So I'm really, really bad at all that. But just to be able to start a podcast, you can go to Libsyn now, you get a feed, and then basically just use Facebook if you wanted to advertise your show and put the feed, put the link there,
or Tumblr.
Look it up on iTunes.
If you're frugal though, Libsyn is the premier option for us, right? They're the most expensive there's lots cheaper options if you're gonna go the route of no website and all you need is MP3s that you're gonna share, right? I mean, you could use an archive.org to get this done and create that out there and just point people to your posts. So you don't even need Libsyn to be able to get this done. I mean, I think if you want to create it that way, you could do it for sure.
Yeah, you could go to podcastingforfree.com. Shameless plug.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are the back end, Dave. RSS, you still have to have an RSS feed, and I see where Libsyn would help from that standpoint. You could still, I mean, we don't recommend it, but you could still use FeedBurner for that. Now it's still working; they haven't cut it off yet, and you could do it that way. You could.
It's interesting because I'm watching them start. They're starting to make me nervous. Audiometric.io is the free. Remember the free media host that gives you an RSS feed that's redirectable and it's iTunes compliant, and they'll pay you. They're not paying anybody anymore. I went, and we've reversed. We've gone from forward to, and they say there's lots of things coming in, and they have a really cool system where it looks like you can insert ads, but they've just gone kind of silent for about 3 weeks. And I'm like, I noticed I'm stuck at $2.64 in my earnings. And I was like, okay, is this going to be one of those where the free host is figured out? They had one ad. Somebody did actually have an ad for insurance that was playing on my one show. But it was kind of like, all right, well, we'll see here. Cause I know when they came on, I'm like, hey, this has been tried before, it's times are different. We'll see. But, I think the fun question here is, do you need a website?
Yeah, that's the real question.
And so the answer is, in terms of need, like, can you do it without a website? Yes, you can do it. So no, you don't need a website. You could use Libsyn's website. It all depends on what are you doing. Like you said, you're a hobbyist. Okay, so if you're not worried about sending people to Amazon or giving them any kind of link that they can click on, you're not going to have the cool, you're not going to have schoolofpodcasting.com/iTunes because you're not going to have Pretty Link. So it's the little things like that. It's little icings on the cake that you can get by. I haven't looked at Libsyn's websites in a while. I know for a while they were pretty butt ugly. I know you can tweak them because I believe if you go to Today in iOS, that is Rob Walsh's site for his podcast, and I think he uses just Libsyn's website. So you can get by without WordPress. That's obviously you can, there's Tumblr, you could use WordPress. If you found a way to make an iTunes compliant RSS feed, and that's where Jim's like, well, there is FeedBurner. There is, you can use WordPress.org for free, and you can make some pretty nice looking websites for that. And then there's Tumblr.com.
A couple sites I've been using, and let me retract. So like if you're using, I was thinking just host providers, right? So I was thinking like archive.org, you don't get an RSS feed with them, right? So although that may be coming, I've been using a service called Shout Engine that gives you an RSS feed, that gives you free hosting, that has not promised the world, which is pretty nice. And they have a really nice setup. And if you go to shoutengine.com, they say they're in beta, and it looks, acts, feels a lot like a provider. So there's an option there. That's no cost. That's one I just used to help evangelize my site. Libsyn and Blueberry, we should both say, right? Both of those, because we've honed in on Libsyn, but both those provide website and hosting for a fee.
And a feed. You can get an iTunes compliant feed on Blueberry as well. I forget there was another one. Most of the, Spreaker gives you, a page. If you go to SpreakerLiveshow.com, it'll take you right to their site.
You could use RSS feed, although Spreaker's not. You got to pay to get the.
That's true.
Back into the paid option, but you could do it that way on Spreaker.
Yeah, but it's because it is going to save you, I don't know, $10 a month.
But like you say, Dave and John, I think the key here is if you use the website for branding, right? It's your site. It's you control it. You can control what's on it. John, don't you want that kind of control?
Well, I don't think if you're doing a podcast about like a TV show or maybe just a hangout podcast where friends talk about a topic, whatever it is, I don't really think you need to send somebody back to a website for that. I don't think, again, if you're not going to sell something, you're more of a hobbyist, not somebody that, wants to monetize their podcast or just wants to put it out, do a nice job. But it's the monthly costs that really kill, for me, the hobbyist podcast. It's not the setup and the equipment as much as it's the monthly costs that you incur as a podcaster.
Right. Yeah. I know when I first started, and I think it's still around, feedforall.com was a software you could buy that would make an iTunes compliant feed. And I did that for a long time. I built my website in Dreamweaver, and then I would go over and take all that information and put it into Feed4All. And then when I discovered WordPress and the fact that I could update my website and my feed at the same time, it saved me a bunch of time. So I quit using Feed4All, but that could be a way to do that. And then you could throw your feed on Amazon S3 or something like that. That would be, pretty cheap, because even if people are hitting your feed, you only get, it's like what, a penny for a gig of bandwidth or something ridiculously cheap on that. I'm looking at the chat room right now, and Daniel J. Lewis is saying,
boy, that's really complicated. And I'm thinking to myself, if that's complicated for Daniel, then I have no shot at it, to be quite honest with you. And again, like I said, the reason this comes up is because my website's going to renew next year, for the year. So it's a big hit at all, for a year. You don't pay that by the month.
That's one of the things I like.
So I'm thinking to myself,
that's one of the things I like about HostGator is they do let you go month to month. Now it might be a little more expensive per month, depending on how many, you buy in a year, but I think it's $8 a month. Whereas if you go a year, it's like $4, but it's a big hit. I do the same thing with Aweber. I pay by the year, and man, when that comes through, it's like cha-ching, and I'm like, oh.
I think what Daniel's referring to, it's hard, right? Is John, once you lose your site, you lose you really do cut off really any ability to monetize practically, right? Yeah. So if I want to drive people to my Amazon site and I want to use the averageguy.tv/Amazon, because that doesn't work anymore, right? So how and their URLs are impossible. So if you're ever going to send anybody to anything to do any stuff, it gets really hard because you only have audio, right, at that point.
Yeah.
And you don't have a way of making, I guess you could use bit.ly links and there are some creative ways you could probably do this to get people, but it's that website that we say over and over and over that hopefully sticks in people's minds, come out to askthepodcastcoach.com, and then we can put things there to make it easier for them to get places. So John, I think if you're just going to be a true hobbyist and you're just going to put the stuff out and you don't care about anybody coming back, or you don't want to send them any links of any kind or that kind of stuff. I guess in the Libsyn and Blueberry case, you could put a lot of those links in the show notes, so to speak, in the feed if people are listening to it. So that would work as well. But then you would be dependent on going to the show notes.
I'm sorry. Now you can just, on the podcatcher itself, you can tap the link. You don't even have to go to the website anymore.
No, true.
I remember the last time I went to a website to click a link for the podcast, because they're right in the notes of the podcatcher.
Right.
So,
yeah. No, right.
If you're going to use Facebook, because it seems to me that most of the people that aren't really tech guys that are into podcasting, everybody's usually on Facebook. That's like the norm for non-techie kind of people. And if you can kind of pander to that audience to get them to come over, because they're not going to a website anyhow. So if you're going to,
John, I disagree with that. I know it. I know practically I know it sounds good, but I get tons of hits back from my listeners on the website. I drive them back to the content I create and some of the things that I do. Now, that's my style of podcasting, right? That's just the way I do it. Could you do it that way? You absolutely could. You could provide those things in the show notes. But I can't. I'm the opposite of you. I can't remember the last time I ever clicked on anything in the show notes on the podcast player, because usually I'm driving. And when I get to my destination, the last thing I'm thinking about is going to those show notes on my phone to get it done. Not good or bad, just different, right? That's a different experience for me.
Well, and there are a lot of people that are finding your podcast by doing a Google search. Mike Dell says that in the chat room. No website, no Google juice. And that's where
Libsyn's probably putting some SEO out for you through their feed, right? Libsyn and Blueberry. Right. I know that's a Mike Dell question. Mike, if I have a feed only through Blueberry, does that feed get me SEO results? Right? That would be key, because then you're right. Because if it doesn't, then Facebook doesn't.
I did have somebody this week say, I saw something you mentioned in an article, and they sent me the link to my FeedBurner, my old FeedBurner feed for the SOP for School of Podcasting. And I was like, I don't know how you found that, but okay. That's, here's the original source. But yeah, if I really wanted to go free, I would not use Facebook. I'm just not a huge, and that's just my own, to me, Facebook changes stuff way too much. I'd go with WordPress.org. And then, because that way, if you ever want to go back, it's an easy transition back to WordPress.com. And, then if you want to, dance on thin ice and cross your fingers, you could use WordPress.com as the media host, and then just run it through, a little bit in my mouth, just a little bit. You could run it through FeedBurner.
Oh, John, what's the most expensive? What's the really most expensive part for you right now? The host providing?
Yeah, it is. The other thing is, if you want to start another podcast, you pay for 400 minutes, and if you don't use those, they go away. So then if you have a show and you want to start another show, you have to have to start a whole new feed. That's another $20 a month, another $20 a month. Now I have one podcast that I don't use anymore. So I just knock that back to a $5 because if you don't pay for it, it goes away anyhow.
Right. So and that's where I go.
So,
do you really need what I affectionately refer to as the Big Shot Smarty Pants stats? Do I really need to know what people are listening with? Do I really need to know where they're coming from? You can get by. For the longest time, I had a lot of people using the $15, if not $7 stat package from Libsyn. And of course, and that's where you have to figure out how long is my show going to be and how many times am I going to realistically publish an episode. And then you can figure out, usually it's, I always go with half a meg a minute for something that's 64 mono, and then a meg a minute for things that are stereo. And then you can look at Libsyn and Blueberry or, any other of hosts that you're interested in and figure out, because in some cases you might go with like the $12 Blueberry. I think there's a $12 value or something like that, where not only now do you get hosting, but you get stats. The Big Shot Smarty Pants stats, I think, on Blueberry.
I feel the the Smarty Pants guys, I think they know that tickle point where you need to be for a half-hour weekly podcast, and they don't give you that. So then you're just under that.
Yeah,
or just over that.
You're always.
So now you got to go to the higher one.
Yeah, that's me. I'm never anywhere near, for the School of Podcasting, I'm never anywhere near my limit for that.
For the inexpensive podcaster, I mean, nobody talks about this except me as an option to do, and I actually do this on some of my stuff. But when you're talking low costs, but not quite like feed burner low kind of deal, like we're worried it's going to go away. I actually, if you're going to create your own site, you're going to use WordPress, and WordPress becomes your feed, right? You can Microsoft has options on Azure to host free WordPress sites, so you can get 10 of them for free. Now it's shared hosting, so it's not the greatest bandwidth. But John, when you talk about a couple clicks and easy to set up, they have made this setup on Azure super easy to spin up a WordPress site, and you'll get it like it'll be yoursite.azurewebsites.net. That'll be your URL, but you can always redirect your feed, whatever you want, over there for free. Just send a redirection over to it. Then you have a WordPress site with a feed at that point, and then I'm a big fan of MediaFire. For $50 a year, they'll host all your media for you. I don't want to say unlimited because it's not, but it's 10 terabytes. It's a terabyte of storage and 10 terabytes every single month of bandwidth. It's the best deal going on the web right now. And
that's amazing. I mean, it's again, as you're trying to learn to be a podcaster or learn the technology of podcasting. I've never heard of what you just said. It was
MediaFire. Now they're slow. And you're not going to get great stats.
Yes, it is slow. Yeah, it is slow. And the stats are like how many downloaded, right? But we're talking budget, right? I mean, there are budget ways. John, if you want me to walk through that with you at some point, just give me a ring and I can walk you through. It's a super simple setup. Once you've seen it once, you're like, I need to write this up, because they talk about it all the time, and I get that response, John, like, you said Azure, I don't even know what that is.
Right.
And so, but I've got 3 or 4 sites out on it, and it works great, and it's easy to set up. And I'm not necessarily a code guy either, John, and I set that stuff up pretty easy. So.
And I need to clarify. Thank you, Daniel. I vice versa'd. WordPress.org is your self-hosted. WordPress.com is the free version, which I know, but it's
I know it's confusing. John, does that help at all?
Yeah, no, it does. And I just figured it was worth a conversation. Yeah. Because as people are starting to get into this, they're looking for options. And when I started it back in 2011, I had no idea how to do any of this. And Cliff taught me. Cliff Ravenscraft taught me. And at the time, he basically knew that, these people are coming in here. They want to do this. So here's how you do this. Here's how you do that. And that was great to get me started. But now I kind of want to look at other options and maybe tweak the process. And that part of the learning is hard because it's a lot of research. It's a lot of trial and error, mostly error. A lot of trial.
Well, Drop Dead Simple.
That's where we're going.
Check out Shout Engine if you want Drop Dead Simple. Everything you're looking for in a podcaster plus an RSS feed. They don't, it's no cost, and you can put as much as you want out there. Now, I've been using them for well over a year, and I've had very little problems with them. But they're kind of an alternative to this when we think about it. You'd have to move everything over there, and that's kind of a pain. And I'm just kind of saying that for people who are listening too, who might want an alternative option if you're going to get into this thing, but not do any of the infrastructure. One of the things I like about Shout Engine, you have zero infrastructure to set up. You just set up an account. It works and looks just like a podcast platform should. You can put episodes in, you can put show notes in, you can put links in, you can upload your audio to it. It's a pretty good service. Shoutengine.com. Check it out.
There you go.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right,
Thank
John.
you, John. Good luck, buddy.
Thanks for calling in, man. Thanks for helping us test the line.
The phone. We'll have to I'll have to log in at 10:15. Then I'll have to have you call me.
Have me call. That's just one of the things we need to knock out and get done pretty early. That is a great question that John has. I mean, I think it's just because you come at it different. This is where there's no one size fits all, right?
No.
Because everybody comes at podcasting a little bit differently.
Well, and then I did an episode once about how you can podcast for free. And I said, number one, give up Mountain Dew. I mean, I spend $3 a day on Mountain Dew. That's $90 a month on Mountain Dew. And, if I quit drinking Mountain Dew and drink water, which is free, I got a lot of money for a media host. So I would look at that too. Is there anything in your life that is not giving you the same return that podcasting is? And cut the cord, or, just find cheaper ways of doing other things. Because there is that argument that, every hobby has a fee, but it is tough, man. I mean, I've been there. I've been the guy standing in front of the vending machine going, can I afford the $1.50 today? Or should I save it for gas money? I've been there, done that. So it's tough. Daniel says he's had horrible luck with MediaFire for my long-term storage.
Yeah, he's using it more like a cold storage location, putting stuff out there. And I have to be really careful. I don't use it for anything but podcasting. I put one file at a time because they have some limits of moving, like in their desktop connector isn't the greatest. And if you are taking a whole bunch of files and moving them all at once, or trying to get them, their service, they're doing this pretty low cost, so the bandwidth's not great. I'm not recommending using them as cold storage, right? It sounds great to have all that space. My recommendation for them is on podcasting, right? If you're going to host your files out there, I host my media files or my video files out there. Done it for well over a year, and it's phenomenal. No problems, no complaints. It works. It's $50 a year. And those files are gigantic, right? Yeah. And I have rollover bandwidth over there. So I totally hear Daniel's point, but I don't recommend them. My recommendation is not to put all your files out there. There's other places to do that, like CrashPlan, that are a lot better than MediaFire for that kind of stuff. But for podcasting, I love it.
Yeah, I've been using them for if I have somebody that asks me a question at the School of Podcasting. In some cases, if I don't have a tutorial, I will make a quick video and I will upload it to MediaFire and then send them the link. The thing that I guess I don't really worry about is there's no way without paying for it to turn off the share option when you send somebody a link. So I could send somebody an answer and they could then forward it to their friend, which I'm not really that worried about.
Yeah, it's not really designed for that. Yeah. It's not one of those highly secure.
And then the other link I can send them will immediately download the video. And I'm like, no, I kind of want them to watch it online, because sometimes whoever I'm sending it to may get freaked out if all of a sudden things start downloading. And you never know what's going to happen. But thanks.
I should, real quick though, I should clarify. I mentioned Shout Engine really quick. Unlimited storage, 10 gig bandwidth for the free version of it. So probably wouldn't get you too far if you're starting. The $10 a month plan bumps that up. So they get a little stingy on bandwidth. So if you're checking out Shout Engine, now I just use it as an evangelism site, right? So I don't get very many downloads out there, but maybe not as I start looking at their pricing plans, probably not practical when you think about bandwidth.
Well, I just got a lovely surprise. I switched the front end of the School of Podcasting over to WP Engine and didn't really read the fine print. And of course, this is one of those, it's hosting designed for WordPress, super fast, yada, yada, yada. Okay, great. I move it. Okay, where do I create my email? No email. No email. No. Okay, we recommend Google Apps for Work. Okay, $5 an email per month. And I was like, okay. Then they only give me, I think it's 20,000 visitors a month, which I thought I don't think I'm anywhere near that. Well, guess what? I'm wrong. And so now they're going to charge me $1 for every 1,000 visitors over 25,000, which by the time this is over, I'm probably going to be around $40-50 a month for hosting. And I'm like, so then I look over, guess who's rolling out WordPress hosting? HostGator, the people I just left. And I'm like, and it's like $30 a month with email addresses and all these other bells and whistles. And I'm like, I might end up just moving because I like HostGator. They've always been good to me. GoDaddy also has a plan right now. I think it's $15 a month for dedicated WordPress hosting. And I'm not sure, but
Dave, you should check out Maple Grove Partners with me. $10 a month. I mean, Christian is doing this. It's a really small operation, but he's charging $10 a month. You'll get all the stuff that you need. You get great bandwidth. You get great support. Your stuff's in a container. Check it out. Let's just talk about it because it's a pretty good deal, and it's like a project, right? I mean, this is a student at the University of Maryland who has his own web farm that he's doing hosting through, and it's pretty good. The AverageGuy.tv is completely hosted on it, and I got great access to him.
Well, that's the other thing I found out about WP Engine. Their support is phenomenal. They will do things that I couldn't get HostGator, depending on who you got on the chat to do it. They were jumping into I'm like, can you just go into my PHP and like whack that table for me? And they're like, sure. But it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And after that, you're kind of like, here's the help. And I was like, oh, no 24/7 support. And I went, So we, but yeah, so I will probably be moving again. We'll see. Once I get my first bill, I'll probably, once I pick myself off the floor.
Moving's not too hard. I mean, it is when you don't have great support.
Right. So
moving's pretty easy. But
hey, if you have a question, of course, you can once you unmute the thing there we go. You can call in. It's 347-850-8007 as we head into the fourth quarter of the podcast here. And Jim, where you want to go?
Well, I got a suggestion for you.
Okay.
How's that sound for you? So, and we'll turn this into kind of a question. Okay. So when you title your show, right, and you're episodic, but the content is very date sensitive, like it is here. So when we talk about Ask the Podcast Coach, you always say, this is Ask the Podcast Coach 4, and then you say the date, right? That way I'm listening to it. Mm. Do you think, when you do Clamor, the Clamor Cast, which I'm just digging, by the way, if you haven't caught the Clamor Cast, harder to say than it is to promote, but if you haven't checked that out, go out there, clamorcast.com, no E, CLAMMR cast, CAST.com. You'll want to have a listen to that. But Dave, you're doing that episodically, and I think as a podcast coach, I would recommend you move that to a date driven, because whenever I listen, if I pick that up and listen to it, there's never a mention of a date, and this goes stale very, very quickly. How do you feel about that recommendation?
Not a bad idea. So I could say, Clamorcast for the top 20 countdown and then the date.
Throw in the date as of.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I like that idea. That is such an interesting show because I get a list from the guys from Clamor, and I've got it down now to where I end up with a PDF in about 4 minutes with clickable links. And the thing I love about it, if I do this in Clamor, I think they changed it now to where when I listen to a Clamor online, at the end of it, they are putting in the whoosh, where I used to have to put that in manually. So now I just click it and the Clamor comes out and whoosh, and I can start talking about the next one. And so it's interesting because a couple weeks back, there were just like one guy had a Clamor about like Washington, D.C. when there was all the trouble over there, just stuff that wasn't really anything I could poke fun at or have fun with. But the last episode was hilarious. So it's always fun seeing what I get to work with. And it is an interesting little experiment. And then the other fun thing is they're actually much better at it than they used to be. But sometimes, especially like this last week where Clamor got clamored basically by Apple, then they're trying to get, they had a fix for their software almost instantly, but then that has to get approved by Apple. And so they're going through all this stuff, and they're, tech support went through the roof because everybody's saying, hey, it's broken. So they were a little late getting me the little list. So that's the other thing that's kind of weird. It's like, okay, as long as I get that on Thursday, it'll be out on Monday. So, so it's I like that suggestion. I'll start doing that.
No, it's one of those things when we talk about formatting. I think that do you emphasize your show number, or do you emphasize the date, or do you do both? Because we all know listeners get stuff in their back catalogs, right? They get stuff loaded up on their and they could look at the date, but honestly, when I'm listening to stuff, I'm not really checking. Going back to John's question, I never read the show notes on my mobile device for podcasts. I just don't do it. I'm not trained to do it. That doesn't mean nobody does it. Apparently, John does, and that's the way that he goes about it. But when you think about, all right, somebody's got 15 of these or whatever, and they're listening to them audibly, or what's even more important, when they show up on TuneIn Radio or TuneIn, or when they show up on, now with the Amazon Echo and its ability to play a bunch of stuff, I think, we're going to get podcast options eventually through Spotify, I think, and we're going to get some of those through Deezer. Those people are listening to that. And is it important to have the date early in your intro so people know how fresh the content is?
Yeah. Massa has a great question. He's asking about what's the difference between web hosting and WordPress hosting. And there is different levels. You have shared hosting, which is the one that's usually like somewhere between $4 and $8 a month. And then if we go up kind of one level, WordPress, what would the verbiage be? WordPress blah, blah, blah hosting. It's basically web hosting geared for WordPress. So they have extra security because everybody loves to try to hack your WordPress login. It's just geared for whatever the specialties that WordPress uses. I'm seeing anywhere from $4 a month, again, over at GoDaddy, but you get a really, really small package, up to $29. I think I'm paying $39 for WP Engine, something like that, which in theory is supposed to be faster. Now, above that, then you get into VPS, which is a virtual private server. Then you actually go to a private server. So do I need WordPress hosting? No. I was on a shared hosting for many, many moons. In fact, a lot of my websites are still on shared hosting. Now, does it make, in theory, right? Google will give you a better Google juice if your website is faster, or so we hear. So in theory, a faster website would be possibly more traffic. There's a lot of possibly, maybe, coulda, shoulda, woulda stuff here. So if you got it in the budget, I would do it. But, right now, most of my stuff is on shared stuff. So, and the other thing, I like Bluehost. Bluehost is one thing that as a ex-customer service rep, I go, really? Number one, Bluehost and HostGator are owned by the exact same people. They own a couple different web hosting companies. And Bluehost makes you buy a year in advance. You cannot go month to month. That's why I recommend HostGator, because some people are like, not really sure if I'm going to do this a long term. All right, let's go with HostGator. And of course, use the coupon code Podcast Coach to get 25% off at HostGator. But see, Mike says DreamHost. I had bad experiences with DreamHost. And everybody, you can always find somebody that will say I had a bad experience with HostGator. You know, if somebody says a bad experience with Bluehost, there's always going to be somebody that wanted them to do something that they wouldn't do. And the interesting thing about Bluehost, because I like both Bluehost and HostGator have 24/7 support, and they have a chat system. When the chat system comes up in Bluehost, it'll say like you have 7 minutes, you're in line. And when it comes up, it actually says, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically, you know, you're on with, you know, Jim or whatever the chat guy is, blah, blah, blah. Please note, I'm also doing other chat windows. So your patience is appreciated. I'm like going, hey, thanks to getting to the front of the line, but you still don't really have my undivided attention. And I was like, really? That makes me feel so special when I know that you can't give me your full undivided attention. So where HostGator does not. Now that might be true at HostGator. It probably is. But I just thought it was weird that it's like, well, there's honesty for you, but I thought it was kind of odd. But that's why I recommend HostGator over Bluehost. DreamHost, now they may have changed, but for a while, and this is one of those where sometimes you have to go back and re-examine your facts. In like 2007, 2008, they were at NMX, and they were all about, we're just like you. You know, all shucks, we understand you guys, and we're cool. And they had things like about, you know, come and party with the DreamHost guys, and it was all about just, we're cool and crazy guys in the basement running the company. I don't want cool, crazy drinking dudes running my website. It was a really weird branding thing and I was kind of like, and then their back end at the time was like nobody else's. They had made a custom cPanel that was not user-friendly, in my opinion. And then I had 3 people who signed up for DreamHost because unlimited bandwidth, baby. No, we'll host your podcast. Go everything. We're the cool guys in the basement. Come on. And then they got kicked off when they got popular. So I just kind of stuck away from DreamHost but I know they seem to have changed their image a bit. So maybe I'll have to go back and
that's like with any service, right? Yeah. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to have a bad experience. You know what? We were talking about MediaFire just a few minutes ago, and I love it. Daniel doesn't love it right now. We are using it for different things, right? We're coming at it from different approaches, and so this is really where we make recommendations. You've got to do some homework on some of this stuff as well and dig right in. We always talk about. Addie just put a link in the chat to podcastwebsites.com, which looks like.
Yeah,
like the promises. This goes back to what John said a few minutes ago. I don't want to do any code. I'm not a code guy, right? And so we have these services that promote this. I don't care what you do to make it simple. At some point, it gets complicated because you get in and you're like, oh, well, I don't like my header right there, and you're like, well, the template, right? Because options equal confusion, and so the less options you have, the less the more options you have, the more confusing it is. So if you're going to remove the code options, you're not going to get very many. It's not going to look the way you want it to look. And so people are like, then you're like, oh, well, you got to go code that. And it's like, oh, yeah. And so no, if you're going to be in this gig for a while, you have to realize at some point you need to dig in and learn just a little bit, right? You gotta know. And the more you know, the more powerful it becomes when we come to code. I'm always a little skeptical. I look at this podcastwebsites.com.
Well,
the promises, it's got John Lee Dumas written all over it. Right?
See, when I see this, it reminds me, I don't know if we were talking about this on or off air. I know we're talking about it off air. There's a thing on Netflix right now about people, men that shaped the America. And it talks about Vanderbilt and John D. Rockefeller. And when I see this, I'm like, John Lee Dumas is an entrepreneur. Duh. I know it's kind of a dumb statement. But he looks at podcasting and goes, great. Now, what do they need? Because John D. Rockefeller had kerosene, and when electricity came about, he's like, okay, now I got a bunch of kerosene that nobody needs. Oh, there's a byproduct of this kerosene stuff called gasoline. Okay. And then he went out and found somebody who needed gasoline. So John is like, got his podcaster's paradise for thousands of dollars and things like that. But he's also like, he's taking all those questions about, well, and the pain of his audience, which is WordPress and web hosting. And he's like, okay, everybody seems to be a little stuck here. And the guy he's got with that, I talked to at Newbie Expo. The guy's awesome. And so they have podcastwebsites.com that is supposed to be cookie cutter, ready to go kind of stuff. I'll be interested to see if John ever gets into the hosting business, because if you can then come up with the service, everybody knows, likes, and trusts you, why not start selling hosting and websites and microphones? And, there's all sorts of things that people need when you start a podcast. And I just thought it was interesting that when I see that come out, I'll be interested to kick the tires on that. It's a little bit like Appendipity. Appendipity has the podcast themes that are geared towards podcasters. But I was like, all right, that's an interesting thought. I kind of kick myself and go, I should have done that. Duck on it.
There you go. You still could. Maybe you could do it better than they're doing it. It's just as this gets popular and these key turn, right? Key turn is never. I always find when I'm working with people who want simple, right? And I get this, and I know why. And John, I'm not picking on you out there. You just called us, so it's easy because I'm referring to you. But it seems like whenever I'll make a suggestion for something simple. It always finds, no matter who I'm working with, the user always finds the corner of the solution that is not available to them because it's simple, right? I don't know why that is. It's like bugs being attracted to the light. It seems like users are always attracted to those things they can't have in some of those turnkey solutions. Squarespace is a perfect example of that. Every Squarespace customer I've ever tried to help comes to me because for a while I was doing a lot of talking about Squarespace, and they would be like, well, Jim, you said it was easy, drag and drop, blah, 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 but I'm trying to do, no. That's not, that one functionality is not available in the template. You're gonna have to use a little bit of CSS to go in there to make that, so I'm always just, there are solutions, there are, in WordPress, there are themes that are easier to set up than others. And I get that. The easier the theme is to set up for you, the most likely you are to run into something where you want to do something and you can't because it's not available in the feed. The easier it is, the less options you have. That's just the way it goes. So I think if you're going to go turnkey and make it easy, you're pretty much going to take what they give you, right?
Yeah.
At that point. Yeah. And I use a Meso Columns theme that I use to make my site look different than everybody else's WordPress site. And it's got it's got like 6 pages of options that I can change in there. And it took me a couple hours to figure them all out, right? But it gives me a lot of power. So that's one of those things. If you want easy, you're just going to take what you get in most cases.
Somebody asked the other day about, I want to start a podcast where I do live calls, but I don't want to use Blog Talk Radio. So I said, well, first things first, it's not out yet. But, Blog Talk Radio has a pretty cool interface. It's going to be 128 stereo. Probably, I would think, by the end of the summer, especially now that you could have your guest call in and everything's direct. I'm like, depending on what, I don't think they're going to be changing their pricing, but it's really, really easy. I said, now you're going to be paying for things that you're not going to be using. I said the alternative is go to callinstudio.com. It's like, you end up paying maybe $10 a month for your calls. I said, but that's all it does is the calls. So you'll need something to stream. So now you got to do Mixler. And there's, what is Mixler now? $12 a month? I forget what it is. I know there's a free plan, but it's only for X amount. It's been a while. Or then you go Spreaker, and I love Spreaker, but there's another, $20 a month. And now you've got to do a mix minus and all the other stuff. And I said, so you're kind of paying, there's easy and expensive, or less expensive and a little more technical. I'm like, it's, depends on what you want to do.
Yeah. Mixler is 10 free 10 and 20. So, so those are monthly plans. $10 a month gets you, what do you get more? You can disable the chat, and then some, you only get an hour on the free plan, on the Mixler free plan, and $20 a month. You get 3 hours on the one up, and then $20 a month. And then Spreaker, Rob alluded to a little bit that Spreaker is thinking about having some call. Was that when you were on there with them? Or did you guys talk about that? I binge listened, so they all flowed together.
Yeah, he talked to somebody about it, and it sounds like they're headed that direction, but that's a huge project, especially if you're going to do it right.
That's why there's not a lot of services out there.
Right, exactly.
Because it's not particularly easy.
Mike Phillips asked, has anyone heard of Ben Kruger as a podcast consultant? Ben is a nice guy. He did Authority Engine. If you go to authorityengine.com, he's the guy that he will do your show notes. He will edit your podcast, edit out ums and nos. If you throw in a Dropbox, and Ben will take it from you and update your website. I think if you do 4 episodes a month, it's somewhere between $400 and $600 a month. And he's more geared towards businesses. He's also small business podcasting, helpmeaddy.com. But now he just changed his name again to Cashflow. He said, checking his phone. Super nice guy, lives all over the planet. I think now he's in Colorado. He was in like Sing Sing, or wait, that's a jail. Singapore.
Yeah, Singapore.
Yeah.
I think Sing Sing's a jail in California.
Yeah. Cashflow Podcasting is his latest iteration of that. Super nice guy, and he's got a marketing background, but he's seeing it as a niche. He's going after businesses that want to position themselves as an authority. And he's a nice guy from what I've Addie says I've heard of him, being that she works for him. So
quick tip on the way out. Can I as we kind of bring things in? So I'm going to post this in chat, and Dave will post it to the show notes as well. But if you have ever wondered, if you've ever been on Facebook and you grabbed your link from your website, if you have one, and you in it, you know how it always tries to bring in an image, and it brings in the image you don't want, right?
Always. Yes.
And once you've given that feed, what happens behind the scenes on Facebook is they actually cache that. They have a whole set of servers that just cache URLs that you put in, so that the next time someone references it, they just got it and they can pull it up right for you. And it's a lot faster that way to do that. But unfortunately, if in my case, sometimes I didn't put the right graphic in the right place, or it's not, I didn't put it in at all and it's grabbing the wrong one, or anyways, there's a link out there and I'd read it to you, but it's super long. And so check on the show notes for it. It basically starts with developers.facebook.com/tools. Okay. So if you head out there, they have a debugging tool. You can just Google Facebook developers debugging tool if you want to get that. They have a tool that you can go out there and you can put your URL in and see exactly what Facebook is bringing in. It's a great tool, very, very powerful. When we talk about code, this is one of those kinds of things. If you're not good with code, this may not make any sense to you, but there's a lot of stuff, a lot of information to get back. The most important and most powerful feature in this is you can force it to recache. So if you've cached it and you got the wrong looking thing, you've done that before, Dave, right? Then you put the URL in again, you get the exact same result, and you're like, I changed it on my site. Why is it not changing? It's not changing because it's cached. This site will help you reset the cache, and then you can, before you even repost the link, you can see exactly what Facebook is going to give you. Then you can post it on Facebook. So very powerful tool. It's one I forget about from time to time, but because we post our stuff in Facebook so much, might be one of those tools you just want to kind of keep in your browser, bookmarks, so that you have it in the future. Google developer or Facebook developer tools, debug, some of those kinds of things, and that should come up for you. Or check the show notes. Dave will have it in there.
And then the other thing we should probably mention on our way out the door here is you were working on validatemyfeed.com.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, we were having a lot of discussions about feed validation. And I thought, gosh, this is way harder than it needs to be. And all these sites have, they're crazy named, right? It's like, so you can Google validatemyfeed.com. And I thought, would it be great if we just had one place you could go that had all the options that we recommend on it?
Right.
So that day on the show, I checked and bought validatemyfeed.com. So if you go out there right now, I only have 2 or 3 options available. But if you want to help me feed that with the feed validation tools you use or any things like that, I'm just kind of creating it as an aggregator site to come back if people want to see all the various options. And I would even I'm not the smartest guy when it comes to feed validation. If anybody wants to contribute to that about why it's important, or some tips or tricks, or if you want to help me publish something in there, I would be more than happy to let you publish there for backlinks and some of those other kinds of things. So just let me know. You can reach me, jim@theaverageguy.tv, if you want to help me contribute, or you've got suggestions. Daniel already gave me one to put in. And Daniel, did you recommend that link that you put in there? So just want to make sure you guys recommend it. This is going to be a crowdsourced site for feed validation. Just one of those things that's easy to remember, validatemyfeed.com.
There you go. And an easy to remember URL. That always helps.
I think so. Yeah.
So, and Addie was asking in the chat room, where did I get my t-shirt? This is a Libsyn t-shirt. It's pound or hashtag podcaster and then Libsyn.com. So I should have worn, I think it's dirty. Today at 2:00, Craig in the chat room will be on the podcast review show, and Craig sent me a t-shirt, and I should be wearing his t-shirt, but I believe it's in the hamper because I do wear it. It's a nice t-shirt. And then, cool. Wait a minute. We have more t-shirt news. Oncepodcast.com/shirts. Maybe that'll be another discussion. Maybe that might be the post show. Maybe we'll talk a little swag today. Oh, look at that. Daniel, you do good work, my friend. I used to be a graphic artist guy. Yeah, I did. I had a little thing, schoolofpodcasting.com/Teespring, if I remember right. And not Daniel's designs. That's one of the things that confuses me about Teespring. You have like a limited time to buy the shirt. I'm like, what if you want it available all the time? It's like, that's kind of goofy. So, but as always, use the coupon code ASK20 at theschoolofpodcasting.com when you sign up. If you want to start a podcast. If you don't have a website yet, we're talking about that today. Send me an email, dave@schoolofpodcasting.com with the phrase quick start. And you can order your web hosting through me. I'll earn a commission, and then I'll set up WordPress for you on your website, plus give you a free month at the School of Podcasting. Jim, thanks so much, buddy.
Thanks, Dave. Great to be here.
We're out the door. We'll see you next week with another episode of Ask the Podcast Coach. Okay, so we're still on Mixlr because I don't publish that. but I'm not on iHeartRadio or whatever, Blog Talk Radio.
I get the feeling I'm going to have to apologize for my Android leeches comment 2 weeks ago. That might require a public apology. I think John keeps bringing it back up. Maybe I was a little too strong in my words there with it.
But yeah, I don't understand the Teespring model, because I know you can go in and make a store, and I'm like, okay, but how can you have a store where every other shirt is expiring? Either A, you're going to make your people wait, because if I remember right, the way this works, their order will be placed when, let's say, 5 T-shirts have to be ordered, or, on whatever, the 27th, 2 weeks from now, they'll just get made, depending on how many people signed up. So to me, that's kind of weird, because either A, you're making people wait, you're going to make people wait anyway. If you're the first person to buy the T-shirt, it's not getting made. So yeah, it's like a Kickstarter for T-shirts. So I like it, because I like the shirt I have. I have a School of Podcasting shirt. I just don't understand how you take that model, a Kickstarter program, and turn it into a store. Because I'm used to, the whole fun thing of the internet is, TeePublic. Thank you, Daniel. Because I like the Teespring thing. In fact, Teespring, and I believe if you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/Teespring, and T is TEE, I see a lot of people that, I see TeePublic. Interesting. Okay, new tees are $14. So now we're back into the whole, I forget the name of the big hosting company. What is it? It's going to drive me nuts. You can buy one shirt, but it's like $19 for it. My cost is not, it's Cafe Press is the one that was always big on that, which is fine, because you can get one T-shirt made, but because you're not buying them in bulk, you're kind of stuck, for lack of a better phrase. And it's really meant for people that really, really, really want to, support your show. Because I don't know about you, when I buy a T-shirt for $20, I'm like, really? For a single T-shirt? I'm like, okay. But that's that whole frugal thing coming out again. But
well, and it's more than just a T-shirt, right? When we talk about it's custom branding on there, what would be awesome in some ways is if you could help offset the cost of that, where they pay 15 and you pay 5, right? If you want to because think about it. You're a walking advertisement for Libsyn at this point, Dave, because you got the shirt on, and all our podcasters watch this or see. We've mentioned it several times. There's value in that.
Let's see if it still exists. Podcastingshirts.com. The survey says no. That goes to some sort of bizarre Japanese website. So I probably have a virus now. Podcastclose.com.
Isn't that crazy how we were working on at Gallup. We have a Youku site, right? So Youku is the Chinese version of YouTube, because of course they block YouTube in China. And so we use Youku to deliver video content in China through our China office. And one of my developers is from China, and I needed some help on the website. Google Translate works for that, but I was still like, hey, can you kind of help me navigate through the site? And he was looking up some directions to something, and man, immediately the malicious URL detector came up.
Oh yeah.
And he was like, oh crap. I'm like, close it out. Not that it matters, but he didn't get infected. But there's so many Chinese sites that are just, and it's not just China, right? The Russian sites, and I'm sure there's plenty of American sites that there's a lot of malicious. If you're not careful with your stuff, man, you got to search carefully right now.
Yeah. And podcastclose.com was a domain I have, and it goes to a place called Shirt City, which actually makes okay shirts. The only thing, and it's not a negative, it is if you live in the US, they're from Germany. And so, they work in multiple currencies, but it just seemed like it took forever to get the T-shirt, and hence what.
When are we going to figure out international shipping too? It's 2015, not 1968, right? Shipping something from the UK today should be no more different than shipping it from LA, right? Just because it's got to go across the ocean. You know how many flights go across the ocean every single day. Right. I mean, we treat it, we still, FedEx and UPS and those guys still treat international shipping like it's 1968. And it's like, come on, we got to, when we send we have all these coaching materials that we ship from the US to all over the world. And it's, in some cases, it's hundreds of dollars in shipping to get it to them. And I'm like, guys, we're not delivering this stuff on mules. This is the 21st century, for God's sake. So why can't I get a package to London the same way I get it to New York City?
Yeah.
In fact, it should be easier.
I guess, does that stuff go through customs? One would think.
That's, I think, the problem. And that's what has to change, right? I mean, this is what NAFTA tried to fix in North America. Yeah. Depending upon your political orientation, that was either a complete disaster or the best thing to happen since sliced bread and peanut butter. But it is, we have a global economy, apparently, somehow, but yet it's impossible. Like, it's more expensive for the Chinese to buy things in China than it is for us to buy them the same exact items here in the United States, right? And you're like, that shouldn't be, it's those kinds of crazy things that we do that it just doesn't, you're like, this doesn't make any sense. We have the infrastructure in place today. I get it. 50 years ago, it was hard to get a box physically from Omaha, Nebraska to London. I get that. But now I can be there I can be in London in 8 hours.
Yeah.
So this whole idea, it's in Germany, we can't, I'm not saying that's what you were saying, but
right.
It just triggered me. I'm like, God, why is this so hard?
Yeah,
and even still a thing.
But even here, a basic T-shirt was $14.45. So I might jump over to TeePublic, because I was just trying to get a T-shirt under $20. Cafe Press, they do. Mike Dell said they do make nice coffee mugs. They make a lot of cool stuff, and the stuff they had was quality. It just, for the one-off T-shirt, it was like, wow, okay. But that's the whole thing. It's like, before I even made this site, I ordered a T-shirt, made one and ordered it, because I don't want to have somebody, get a T-shirt and they wash it twice and it disintegrates. But I think all this place did was T-shirts too, as well. You could probably,
like those, when you go to those conferences and they give you those T-shirts that are wrapped in, that have been pressure, they're in the shape of something. And then you open those up and they basically turn to dust. The first time you wear them, they just fall off your body, kind of deal. Jeff had said, they don't strip search boxes, which this is the real problem with shipping internationally. It's all political. Right. It's what can come in and out. It's the VAT that, because everybody wants their money. This is the real problem. Everybody wants their money on stuff coming in and going out. That's the real problem in international shipping.
I have another friend.
Get it, Mr. Miyagi?
Yeah,
you
almost.
Get your chopsticks out.
Yeah, that'd be it. That'll be fun.
Massa says he could tell us some stories about customs that would blow your mind. Customs is probably, this is a system that was designed and developed in the 1700s. Right?
Wow.
The British were the best at this. When we think about the taxation, and certainly the idea of taxation or customs and shipping goes well beyond earlier than that. But really, the British made it. They refined it and made it the system it is today in the early 1700s. And so it's so archaic, and it's one of those things that when we think about global business, I think as global business gets more personal now, where it's more people shipping things with the advent of Amazon and eBay and some of those kinds of things, it's one of those things where the walls are going to have to come down for us to really be a global economy. So, all right, that got way geekier than it should.
Well, then the fun thing is, then you got the whole. Every time you turn around, somebody's trying to blow us up, kind of thing. It's like, so how do you let your guard down and not get blown up? And
right. How about you be a better citizen to the world? That's probably that would be a good. We got too political. Sorry.
That's it. Oh,
sorry.
Yeah.
It's a good podcast.
Yeah. So
Jeff also says terrorism is a major barrier, and I get it. I totally get it. It's just one of those things. If that aside, terrorism aside, when we think about what the government's imposed on us for taxation purposes, or levies, right? It's not really taxes, it's levies.
All right. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be next week's episode of the School Podcasting. Because somebody sent me an email because I said, I forget what I was talking about in my episode where I said it's like, it was like the Freebird of whatever. You know, to me, when you're playing, somebody always wants you to play Freebird. They want you to play the electric slide. You know, the same thing.
Beat it.
Yeah. What are the podcasting Freebirds? And I was thinking, what microphone? I hear that a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely the 2100, right? That is the most popular, I think, from a recommendation standpoint.
But what are the questions? Like, what are the? Because I thought about this about 2 months ago, doing a newbie episode. Like, the top 10. I could go.
Mixer. I think Mixer's ahead of microphone, right? I think most people get kind of a microphone. There's the microphone geeks that will, they're going to try every version out to see what they can get. But this whole idea of Mixer. You know, what do I need? You know, can I just run it USB or do I need to run it XLR? I think that's when we talk about gear, that right now, that's a question that's getting asked a lot of.
I do get that.
Hosting, of course, we talked about that today. I think hosting and how that works and those pieces.
Those are probably, it's a lot of gear questions. I haven't heard how long should my show be in a while.
Yeah, no, I think we've kind of figured gaining listeners, right? That's another.
How do I grow my audience? That is true.
How do I grow my audience? You know, how do I go out there? Everybody's looking for that quick, hey, if I send out a couple tweets, you know, I'll be at 500 people. And so that's one of those kinds of things I think we get a lot of questions on.
Yeah. And then I thought about it, and then I was talking to somebody else about this, and they said, you do know Cliff is doing this. And I'm like, no, I was unaware. And I guess Cliff is doing a top 10. And I was like, and that's really weird too. Cause like, is Jason's listening still, right? I'm going to have Jason sometime on my show, Jason Bryant, cause he's just got a cool story. He keeps growing and growing his, Matt Talk Online. And I was originally going to have him on, and then he went on like 3 other people's shows. And I was like, I don't want to be a rerun. But you always assume that everybody that listens to Daniel's show or Mike's show or whoever is also listening to your show. And that is probably not the case. There are those extreme geeks of us, but I was like, how do I make money? There's another one.
No, I think in fact, I think it's the opposite, that I think we underestimate the number of people that cross-pollinate on the shows. Like you said, we all do, but we're such a small number.
Yeah.
Because we all listen to each other's podcasts. This is funny now. We've gotten in this circle of, I get comments from other podcasters who are listening to my show, and I just realized we're all sharing the same the same group think, right? Yep. From that standpoint. But that being said, I think the majority of the audience, and I think it's a big majority, is different. So bring that. I'm always surprised. I'll have, I had the guys from MediaFire on my podcast months ago. It was last year at this time. And I was surprised how many people in the podcasting community didn't listen to that interview. So I think it is important that you do the interview anyways, because you're going to reach some people. You think or either you do the interview with the guest or you become the guest on that show. Even if you've done this 100 times, it's like, look, there's going to be a few people where that will not have heard it on another show.
That is true.
Yeah, there's some good ones out in chat going on right now. How long? We talked about that.
Mike and Mixer. Growing
scheduling tool. Addie says best scheduling tool. That's that one that kind of comes off and on, right? I hear that from time to time, and then I don't hear it for long periods of time. Then all of a sudden that one will pop back up. It's like, how do I get my guests scheduled? Yeah.
A lot of people like Schedule Once. I like this thing called appointlet.com. It's like $10 a month. Ties in with my Google Calendar. Schedule Once is great. It has so many options though. For me, I was like, I don't have a team. It's like, it's just me.
I use Google Docs and email. Send the guest an email. Hey, are you interested? Or Twitter, interested in joining us? I find the key to booking guests is give them the date, right? Don't leave it open like, well, can you go? What's the best day for you? I have found a greatest success. Hey, we're on Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Central. Can you make that date? And,
that is something that even today with Craig, it was kind of cool. We're doing this at 2, but we need to start saying, either you're going to have to do this on a Saturday or a Thursday night or a Monday night, one of those. And if you can't do those, don't sign up to be reviewed. Because we had one guy that it's tough. You know, we all have lives, but it's the guy from Under 10 Fitness. I think he canceled twice, and Eric had to cancel once. It's hard to get three people together. It's hard enough to get two. When you get the more you add, the more difficult that gets.
Yeah.
So that show, the podcast review show, is in terms of on a consistent basis. Number one, not everybody wants to get reviewed. They do. They just want us to spend 3 hours going over the podcast for free, and that just doesn't work. And so, Calendly is another good one. I've heard about that. And it's free. I think Calendly is free. I know Schmittauer, Amy Schmittauer uses Calendly, and I'm like, it's one of those where if it's good for Amy, I will take that as a positive recommendation.
I just must not have enough guests or something, because I just don't. For me, I just I schedule a couple guests a week. We just use spreadsheets and email to get it done. Dave, let me ask you this question: true or false? No, that's not a great way to start this. True or false? Your best guests are the one you ask, as opposed to them asking you.
Yeah. I've had. I need to see. I was contacted by a booking agent on somebody who is a kind of a small business guru, like how to run your business. And I was like, okay, can you connect the dots? Because I don't see small business person in podcasting, although we all are kind of our own little company if you're trying to make money. And even if you're not making company, you're kind of, the buck stops with you. And, she couldn't, basically. And I went, yeah, that's why, Now, I've had people refer saying you should talk to so-and-so. That's and it's somebody that listens to the show, yes. But if it's somebody I've never heard of and they're like, I'd like to be on your show, I'm like, and who are you again?
Yeah, I find the interviews are best when I find them and track them down. It's just it's a general it's probably an overstatement or a general too broad of a generalization, but it just seems better.
Yeah, Bill in the chat room. Bill, it's nice to see you, buddy. I used VCita for a while. The thing I didn't like about VCita is to have all my inbox, because you could have all your email in VCita, and you had to go every time I wanted to reply to anything, I had to go to their website, and that was the deal breaker for me. I was like, what? And then she loves Edgar, because I keep seeing that she keeps retweeting that she was on my show, which I appreciate. But if you don't want to, I just made a tutorial for this on the School of Podcasting. It's a fun little tool. Do not use it to Twitter bomb. Tweetjukebox.com is a free version. You just add a bunch of tweets and you schedule them out, and they will just keep repeating. You have to be careful with that, because I have it tweeting once every 10 hours. It'll tweet out about an old episode of the School of Podcasting. And if you don't tweet a lot, even because originally it was like every 4 hours, and then I looked at my Twitter feed and it was just nothing but me, and I was like, and that's not really what I want my Twitter feed to be. So I backed way down. I think I now have it doing like Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. It will do that. And then it's like
Mike Howard says he's had some great guests reach out to him. I'm not saying it's impossible. I have found, which the point I'm trying to get at is, if you want good guests, you got to do a little bit of work on that to reach out to them. And not every guest that approaches you, that's one of those kinds of things, like, the really good guests are the ones that you have to work hard for. Although Mark Maron apparently didn't have to work very hard for the president. So maybe that's totally wrong, right? From that standpoint. Mike Phillips asked about Chatwing out there.
What are your thoughts on that? Because I love it, because I'm using the free version.
Yeah, I'm using the free version as well. It has worked well for me. We've had a little issues with the SSL encryption. If you're going to pay $10 a month to get it SSL encrypted if your site is done that way. But if it's not, I just downgraded. I created a new site and downgraded it to non-SSL so that I could use the free version of Chatwing. I've had great success with it. I think it looks good. I think it's easy to use. I think it's easy for users to get into. We use it for Gallup. So, we do podcasts where we do, on the Gallup side, we do 50 to 100 live when we're live on the Gallup webcasts, and the chat room holds up. They have really gotten, and these are not tech savvy guests, right? Or the people listening to the show, they're not tech savvy, and yet it works really, really well. So Mike, I like it. Dave, what about you?
Yeah, to me, I love the fact that people can sign in with their Twitter and their Facebook, which makes it easier, which is kind of cool because that way I can see. I don't know that we have. No, I don't think we have a person in here that is not like I can see everybody's name. So there's no like anonymous or
guest.
Yeah,
there is guest options, and I get the guest option on the Gallup side where somebody will not want to set up an account, and it's not clear enough in setup that you don't have to do that, right? That you can change the name of your guest. You can still be in a guest account and change the name from something other than guest 481, right? From that standpoint, but it'll allow you up to 1,000 guests in here in the system that are logged in. But yeah, no, I've liked it. I think it's been a good. I've had some of my users complain that it doesn't update properly, and I think that's on the user side, not on the Chatwing side, because I have plenty of people who use it and use it without any problems. It's the couple complaints I get are from guys that have, huge routers in between them and their internet, and they've locked everything down super tight so they barely get internet traffic through. Type deal. And then I'm kind of questioning, well, maybe you've shut a port off or something that's affecting Chatwing. But I think for the most part, it's working great for us, right?
Yeah. What is OmniFocus? It looks like some sort of, I know it works on the Apple phone, it says. I did, because last week I was talking about how you can set up an RSS feed for MailChimp. And then I had somebody reach out to me and say, you do know MailChimp hates affiliate marketers. And it's interesting how you have these memes, because if you Google like MailChimp hates affiliate marketers, you will get a bazillion different articles on it. And it's again, one of those things where I kind of go, I'm really starting to go back to the original source. And so I went to MailChimp's website and typed in, MailChimp's hate. And if you go to their blog, it's like what they hate. They say, look, if your entire purpose of your email list is to send people to links and make money, and you're going to go out and buy a list and then send your offers to these people, we're not for you. That's all they're saying. They're like, but if you send people valuable links that people want, and kind of, if you're not just an open, like just I'm in it to spam and shotgun marketing, you're going to be fine. And I was like, well, there you go. So I just thought it was funny there. And they barely said, if this is you and you do this, that, yeah, we don't want you. It's like, thanks, but no thanks. And I was like, that's kind of cool. Because most people are like, oh, we, come on down. We'll do everything we can. So it is interesting though. Because I just saw like post after post of like, and all they were doing was saying, and this is where I think we're guilty. We so-and-so on this post said that. And so you go read their post and they're like, so-and-so said that. So somebody's repeating that something else that somebody else said. And I'm like, all right, let's consider the source. And I went back and was like, So that's kind of my new thing, mainly inspired by the whole Audello thing. Like I never really reached out to them and said, what's the deal with your thing? So, but anyway. So we should probably wrap her up. I got a 2:00 thing with Craig this afternoon, and I got to dig into his audio file now. I was listening to a show this morning, which actually it's funny because it's a show to teach people how to speak English, and I speak English, and I'm like, wow, I should listen to the show because I was doing, just real proper, like, little things that people mess up with grammar and things like that. So
Daniel's giving a grammar school. A grammar class right now on the word forte out in chat.
The grammar awesome.
I'm not an Android guy, so apparently I'm not an Android guy. So that's one of those other phrases. I'm not a this guy or I'm not a that guy. That's so. Before we go,
yes,
let me just do it. I'm sorry I said Android listeners are leeches. I publicly apologized. I did not mean that in any kind of wrong way. I was just
yes. When Jim says leeches, he means it in a positive term, not
yes. Because hey, in the 1800s, leeches were used for medicinal purposes.
That's right.
They were good.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well,
yeah. Have a good afternoon, Dave.
I have a really weird thing. I have my Mac plugged into a flat screen TV now that apparently has like its own screensaver.
Oh,
so I'm constantly looking up going, wait,
flipped over.
Yeah, it's like, no, It's weird.
Just a reminder, Windows 10, 3 weeks away. Do not install it on your production systems unless you've tested it. Just to remind, each week I will give a Windows 10 warning.
Yeah.
Do not install it on your production systems. It's ready. It's really cool. I mean, there's some cool stuff. It will be ready. You need to test it. And if I'm going to put it on a production system, I'm going to give it a month or two before I do that. I won't upgrade my PCs here for a couple months. I'm running Windows 10 on a Surface Pro 3. That's not production, and it works great.
Well, here's my question. Did they bring back Start Programs, All Programs?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yay.
You can make it look just like Windows 7, right? You still get this. You get the big boxes, the live tiles is what they call them. You have both in desktop mode, this is really kind of cool. In desktop mode, you have both the option to use the live tiles or shut them off. You can just remove them all if you want, so it looks just like Windows 7. But if you have a convertible like a Windows Pro 3, or there's some other tablets where you pull the keyboard off. When the keyboard is on, it's in desktop mode. When you pull the keyboard off, it goes into tablet mode, and you get the live tiles, which is what you want because you're using your finger, right? I mean, you want the big targets and kind of stuff yeah, they got it right. I mean, it's going to be cool. So if you're a Windows user, I'm warning you, do not upgrade on July 29th. Give it a month or two. And you just for your production systems. If you want to test it, the ISO that's available right now, 1066 is the ISO. It's super stable, and you could get some good use out of it. There
you go. And our Windows update for the week. So excellent.
Yeah, we should make me make that a part of the post show.
There you go.
It's the Windows 10 warning of the week.
All right. We'll see you guys later.
Take care. Thanks, chat room. See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.